guys, and welcome to part 2 of the Luffy analysis, which I've been promising for like, what, 2 months? I don't know. A lot of stuff happens. Let's just forget all that now. Let's get into the analysis before I just talk for 17 minutes without saying anything. Okay, so if you haven't seen the first part of the Luffy analysis, that's okay. You don't need that to watch this. I do refer to some of the things, but you just need to like watch the first part to get like the reasons why I think that. So if you have like questions, go watch that after you watch this. It doesn't really matter what order you watch it in, just so you know if you haven't watched the first one. But yeah, just quickly to recap the last one. Last time we discussed Luffy's emotional intelligence, and in this one we'll look more at Luffy's natural capabilities when it comes to his natural fighting genius. So we'll talk about his battle genius and how he uses experiences and observations to learn and improve. So to talk about Luffy's fighting capabilities, we need to first establish how much of Luffy's talent or skill set is natural genius and how much is something that he's learned from practice and training. So let's start off with his natural ability or his natural genius. So I don't know how nerdy some of you are, and if you like me just randomly go through the One Piece Wikia sometimes, but sometimes I'll do that. And in Luffy's Wikipedia there's like a very interesting line under his like talents or skills or something like of that sort, and one of the first things, actually I think this is the first bullet point, is that he's a fighting genius. And I think we can all agree on that, because Luffy to some extent does have something natural about him when he fights. There's some kind of like instinct or natural habit that he goes into when he fights. Like, he isn't just good because he's practiced, he's good because he's just born with natural fighting capabilities, but also, of course, because he's experienced battle. But I'll start with all the natural stuff and then experiences later, as I said. But we can just look at like the prime level natural instinct kind of thing skill that Luffy has had probably throughout all his life, and then maybe developed a little bit here and there before we get into like where he actually starts developing it. But we can look at a fight like the one in Little Garden where he fights Mr. 3. And we have that scene by the end of the fight with Mr. 3 and Golden Week, where Mr. 3 hides himself in this like rain of clones of himself, and Luffy instantly knows who is the real Mr. 3, and when he asks how and why, Luffy just says instinct. And while Luffy says instinct, I definitely think, okay, observation haki, because hey, that would like work a whole lot here. Now, observation haki, as Luffy probably uses here to find Mr. 3, is actually not Luffy's naturally afflicted haki. If we remember back to when Rayleigh was explaining haki, he explained that while a lot of people do have the ability to learn 2 or 3 different types of haki, like Rayleigh and Luffy for example, and a lot of the top tier dudes, they all know all the 3 types of haki. Some people just stick with their natural affinity, so like they'll only do observation haki because that's their natural affinity. And I mean, Rayleigh doesn't use this word, but he'll say like they only use observation haki because that's what they can and that's what they then develop, and maybe someone only uses armament haki and so forth. But obviously Luffy learns all of them. Can't speak, sorry. But I think that what we can kind of take away from Rayleigh's little speech is that even though you can learn all 3 or just 2 types of haki, then you still have a natural affinity with one of them. It's kind of like when Oda said that Sanji is really good at observation haki, Zoro's really good at armament haki, and Luffy is really good with Conqueror's haki. It's like they can still do all 3, or in Luffy's case it's all 3, and for Zoro and Sanji it's just the first 2, for now at least. There are theories, but let's not go into that. But we can just see that that's where their natural affinity lies. So yeah, they can do more than one, but there's just one that they're more in tune with, because it's not like they were born with that, but they were just born more to that nature. This again goes with Usopp and Dressrosa, because he has a natural affinity with observation haki, and that's why he unlocks it in Dressrosa at a critical moment, kind of when Luffy does that for both his observation haki, as we see here with Mr. 3, or later in the series. I think I have more examples of where he uses observation haki. Maybe, we'll see. But definitely we see it with Conqueror's haki, we see it with the bowl that Duval has that I'm sure has a name that I can't remember. We see it in Marineford, we see it in Impel Down. I think we see it at one more instance where he uses it subconsciously, but I don't remember right now. But we all know like the big scenes where Luffy uses Conqueror's Haki and he doesn't know what's going on. And it's interesting to see, of course, that he uses Conqueror's Haki much more than he uses Observation Haki before the time skip, because that is his natural affinity. But it's still interesting to see that even though his natural affinity is Conqueror's Haki, he still subconsciously uses Observation Haki. I don't think there's any point in the series that could point to Luffy having used Armament Haki subconsciously, but feel free to correct me if there are any instances, but that was really not like the point of this video. I just wanted to make like the connection between Haki and Luffy's just natural ability to use them even if he doesn't know what the hell he's using. So the next incident I want to talk about, and I'm gonna talk a lot about incidents here because the whole point of this is to like kind of use the materials we have in the manga to back up all the times we've seen Luffy use natural abilities and just be this battle genius. So I'll use a lot of incidents like very specific ones, more so in the other one where it was just a lot more like moments and facial expressions and stuff like that, and stuff he does all the time. Here it's very like in this battle, because that's where I have my material from. But yeah, let's talk about his fight against Enel. I'll talk about this again later, but for now I'm just gonna stick to one specific scene here. And also, if you see me reading, that's because I have it all written down so I don't miss anything. Where am I? Yeah. So we have this really, really good scene of Luffy and Enel fighting, obviously. And Luffy's like, okay, how can I get past Enel's mantra, aka his Observation Haki, because he can just predict my moves and I don't know what to do against that, because if he can predict my moves, then I can't attack him because, I don't know, I'm not fast enough, I can't do anything. So he has this brilliant idea of just switching his brain off and going into natural instinct mode and just dodge stuff. And I think this is super interesting because then we have this really funny scene of Luffy just being all flubby and just going like, blah, 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 like grass in the wind. And he dodges everything perfectly. And I'm pretty sure Nami narrates it or something. But it's really interesting to think about because if you had any other character who were like less of a fighting type in that situation, they couldn't just switch up their brain and do the same thing Luffy could. Like imagine if like Nami or maybe Usopp or yeah, someone like that tried to do the same thing, they'd probably die. Like I don't think you can just succumb to your natural instincts and do as well as Luffy did at that moment. It's because his body naturally responds to stuff like that because he's probably fought all his life. We know that actually from Great Terminal, and he looked up to Shanks and all that. So it's naturally ingrained in his body to fight and obviously not take punches. And whatever Enel was throwing at him, pretty sure at this point was like a, what's it called, Trifork? I don't know. And yeah, I thought that was a really interesting scene to bring up because again, it's like natural ability. It's something that's like deeply engraved within Luffy to fight, and obviously his natural instincts try to let his body not get hurt. Okay, I'm gonna just skip any Slappy for now because there are scenes in there that I'm gonna talk about, but I'm not gonna do any of this in chronological order. I'm just gonna do it in the order that like the bullet points that I'm gonna talk about occur, so don't worry, I'm gonna come back to any Slappy and Crocodile fight and all that. But for now I'm gonna skip ahead again to when Rayleigh taught Luffy about the 3 forms of Haki, because at some point during their training, Rayleigh compliments Luffy and tells him that, oh, you have really good eyes, and obviously he's not referring to the fact that Luffy doesn't need glasses, he's referring to the fact that Luffy, he observes well, like he sees stuff and he takes notes of what's important and stuff like that, when he fights, obviously. The thing is, Luffy being a good observer, I don't know if that's actually a word, but I hope you know what I mean by that. It's a thing we see in the series quite a lot. So I'm gonna go through some more incidents just to show you where this isn't just how he uses it and stuff like that. Because as I talked about last time, if you watched that video, if not, I'm just gonna repeat here. Establishing character traits early on is important. This is why I write things down so that I don't mess up. The Romance Dawn arc shows us all of Luffy's most important characters, so how his dream is more important than his life, how he values good-hearted companions, his straightforward attitude, his tendency to be a little bit too honest, how much he values food, his yearning for adventures, and as my last video also argued, his emotional intelligence. Orange Town re-shows a lot of these traits since it's still early in the series and obviously people were still like kind of just reading it as it went on and just didn't jump, I presume. But we also see more of Luffy's goofy side here, especially because, you know, this is the Bucky arc, so obviously there's gonna be a lot more humor. And we also get to see more of his ability to read people when it comes to Nami. And we also see him in a more struggling fight because, of course, Alita wasn't really that much of a threat, and neither was Morgan, especially because Zoro was there. And we see how much he treasures his Straw Hat. So again, we have all the important values there. And next is the Syrup Village arc, which again is pretty early on. And then, because the series has to progress somehow, we once again have a stronger enemy than the last one. This time Kuro. And Kuro is the first person that we see Luffy interact with that has superhuman speed. And Luffy deals with this surprisingly well. Now, if we consider the level of Luffy's enemies beforehand, so Alvida, Morgan, Bucky, this is probably the first time in the story where Luffy has found that his skills of observation are actually useful because, again, the other enemies weren't really that big of a threat. And it's not like he didn't use observation in those fights, like, he probably did, but not to the extent that he does here. And while we again could interpret this as observation haki contributing, I think it's noteworthy that we have Luffy more or less figuring out how Kuro's, stealth walk works, and he deals with it multiple times. So the first time he figures it out, he just kind of punches him in the face, and then the second time he figures it out, he, I think, again punches him in like the gut or something. But Luffy doesn't mimic him like he does later on, which I'll also get into, but he kind of figures out the attack pattern and after getting hit a couple times, and then he just finishes Kuro off. Because obviously he's still the stronger here. Just because Kuro is stronger than his previous enemies does not mean that he's stronger than Luffy. There's still a while until we get to that point. Let's go to Enies Lobby, which I skipped like 5 minutes ago. Because Kuro's stealth walk, that was what it called, yeah, stealth walk, is more or less just a downgraded version of Sora, which is the speed technique used by the CP9, and later also by Sanji and Luffy to some extent. And Luffy literally learns how to use or move at superhuman speed by observing the CP9 members' moves and then kind of mimicking it, but in regards to Gear Second. And he tells Blue as much, like he says something along the line of, "I'm glad I met you guys because without you I wouldn't have figured out this move," and then he goes into Gear Second and knocks him out. That's a good scene. I know. I think that's one of the scenes everyone remembers because like that's the first time we see Gear Second. That's just like epic. I don't know, I rewatched that fight a lot. I don't know if you guys do that, but I do. But basically what I wanted to point out here is that with Kuro, and I'm gonna read this because I'm gonna mess this up, Luffy observes and applies his knowledge to counter, but in Water 7 and Enies Lobby, he observes and applies the knowledge to himself to replicate it. At this point, and by this point I mean in Enies Lobby, Luffy has also been exposed to superhuman speed multiple times, so it's not far-fetched to say that he throughout his journey got more and more acquainted with various techniques, and Sora was just the one that fit him the best, or just the one that best fit Gear Second. Or it was easier for him to distinguish the style and apply it to himself because he saw multiple people use it, as in the entire CP9. But nonetheless, learning by observing is an impressive feat because usually you learn by being taught or you learn by actually doing it a lot of times. But Luffy was just like, yeah, I saw it, and then I maybe tried it out a few times. Obviously his fight against Bluno was probably not the first time he used Gear Second, just in battle, but yeah, he learned that pretty quick because he did not meet CP9 before Water 7, and there was not a lot of time between Water 7 and Enies Lobby, so he maybe tried it out once with Gear Second that he probably developed before seeing Sora, but that was just like the final puzzle piece he needed, in my opinion. Now we're jumping back in time again because I want to go back to East Blue and go to the fight that actually inspired this part of the analysis in the first place, and that's the Don Krieg fight. And I remember reading the Don Krieg fight, like rereading it, I think it was maybe one and a half year ago, where I was like, yes, I want to reread One Piece, and then I remember reading the Don Krieg fight and I was like, yeah, Luffy's definitely a lot smarter than we give him credit for, like, especially in fighting, because we all know that Luffy is a really good fighter, but we never give him credit for being, like, strategic like Sanji, and we just give him ability, like, or credit for being strong and being creative with his devil fruit power and the powers that he's given. So with observation haki, with Iron Man haki, with Conqueror's haki and stuff like that. But even though Luffy obviously isn't as strategical as Sanji or to some extent Robin or Nami or even Usopp, Luffy does still think a lot when he fights, especially when he fights people that are quite tricky. If you remember back in Thriller Bark, when Zoro and all the others are fighting Oz, Zoro points out that they can't just rely on Luffy to beat Moria and to get their shadows back, because there is the problem of Luffy's weakness of like deceit and trickiness, or whatever Zoro said at that point. Because yeah, Luffy does fall for a lot of that, but he still does think, and he still, when you have a more straightforward enemy, you have Luffy shining a lot. But the Don Krieg fight is really interesting because you have Don Krieg, who is to some extent really tricky, because he's like, oh, I'm gonna throw some poison gas at you, boom, and then he throws like shuriken. But so to some extent, this fight is still quite tricky, which is really interesting that this is then the fight where Luffy shows his more tactical side. I don't think tactical is a word, but you know what I mean, right? I'm not entirely sure what word I'm looking for, but yeah. Okay, so let's actually talk about the Don Krieg fight now, because this fight shows a lot about Luffy in combat, because this could be considered the first time that Luffy fights an opponent who can actually challenge him. Like, as I said before, like Kuro, Alvida, Baki, Morgan, not really a challenge to Luffy, and while Don Krieg is still not like Luffy level strong, at least in my opinion, he definitely still is a threat. Like, Luffy does get hurt in this fight, more so than in the others, but I do still believe that Arlong is the first like enemy that he beats that's actually stronger than him. But yeah, nonetheless, Don Krieg is a challenge. And really, Don Krieg has a lot going on for him. Like, he has a bunch of weapons. He's not entirely stupid. Like, he still kind of is, but he's not entirely stupid. Bucky and Kuro are kind of like, yeah. And they're fighting on a platform where Luffy, where if Luffy should just slip out once, he'll end up in the water, and that's, you know, not good. Because there's no one to save him, because one, his crew isn't there, because, you know, the Zoro thing, the Nami thing, they're not there to save him, and all the Barati people are throughout the fight. Like, you have Sanji fighting off Gin, and then Pearl, and then you have like other Don Krieg members swimming around and other like Barati members swimming around. It's all just a big mess. So basically Luffy can't really rely on anyone to save him if he should fall into the water. So he's quite careful here. And the thing is, you still see Luffy charge a lot of Don Krieg because, you know, it's Luffy, he's still gonna do that. But you also have a lot of panels of Luffy just dodging, or maybe just being a little more careful than you've seen him in the other fights. I was about to say arcs, but that doesn't make sense. In the other fights. This part is mostly when Don Krieg pulls out that stupid spear bomb, because Luffy's like really aware of that, because if he gets too close, obviously he gets exploded, and then he like flies backwards, and that's not good because he could land in the water. So there we have like a lot of panels. When I went through it, you can see a lot of panels where Luffy's just like clinging onto stuff, and kind of, there are a lot of panels where you didn't need a close-up on his face, but you can definitely see Luffy thinking here. So yeah, it's really interesting how, because you know how in One Piece or just general shonen manga, you have a character that's flung backwards because of an explosion, or they were just, you know, flung backwards because of something. You often have like a big shot of them just like flying off in the distance, but here you have a lot of shots, like you still have shots like that, but you have shots of Luffy also like kind of looking down at Don Krieg, like a full face on close-up of his face, where you can just see like he's thinking about something, like how to deal with this spear bomb thing. That's like, generally it's kind of stupid. But we have Luffy and Don Krieg, when the spear comes out, they fight a little bit. You have Luffy flying all over the place and receiving a lot of blows, and it's at this point where he receives like the most damage. So he's barely hurt before the spear, and there's a lot of blood coming out of him after the spear. But you have just a point where Luffy goes, "Mwahaha, all according to plan," and then kind of reveals his evil master plan. You know, not really, but and he suddenly like makes a stand and says, and I'm gonna quote here, "I punched it, the spear, 5 times now. 5 times, now get ready, cause now I'm in this wide open space and I'll send you flying." So what does this tell us? This basically tells us that Luffy knows exactly what he's doing. So he's lured Don Krieg onto this big piece of like destroyed ship where he actually has room to move around him, because we know in the early series of One Piece, Luffy often has like a big run up before a big punch, because that's how he not gains his strength, but that's like how he builds up strength before he actually gets really strong. So he needs that run up, and he can't do that if he's just like jumping around trying not to fall in the water. So he lures Don Krieg to this wide space, and then he where am I? Luffy then explains that the point of destroying the spear, or just like the blade of the spear, was to reduce its power, because now Don Krieg is not having a spear with or an exploding spear with him, he's just like waving around a stick with a bomb on the end. Which Luffy is like, yes, that reduced that spear's power level by about 50%. Which is like, okay, fair enough, because Luffy knew that the problem didn't lie with Don Krieg but with the spear. Like, Luffy barely took any damage before Don Krieg pulled out that stupid spear. So he knows that that's the problem. He knows that if he can get rid of the spear, or at least the damage that it produces, then he can be fine. And the explosions aren't as bad as like literally being cut into, apparently. So now we have some more action scenes where Luffy quite clearly avoids Don Krieg's spear, or his bomb on a stick. And we see him like attacking from afar, so he like throws a mast at Don Krieg, which he then burns with a flamethrower, because that's another stupid gadget that he has. And Luffy then uses Gatling on him, and Don Krieg is like, "Mwahaha, you cannot impale me because I have this great armor." And then Luffy gets up close and bullets it in the gut. Which, okay, Don Krieg, that was stupid. You should just have defended against that. And then we have some more fighting, and Luffy basically ends the entire thing by bazookaing Don Krieg, and he destroys the armor, and he just plummets downwards. And then we have this anti-rescue scene. But basically, this just shows you that Luffy definitely knows what he's doing. Like, he understands what the problem is every time. Like, he understands, okay, so I'm in an environment where I can only, like, walk so much, because if I walk more, if I just run towards him, I'll get thrown in the water. If I run across here like this, he'll throw these things at me, he'll do this and this and that. Like, Luffy knows exactly what he's doing throughout the entire fight. It's really interesting to go back and see, especially because this is still where Oda is kind of struggling with action scenes. Not as much as she did like in the Buggy fight, which is kind of like, what? But they're still like, they don't look as epic as they do now, obviously. But it's super interesting to see how Luffy fights, because if you really, I read through, this morning actually, I read through the Kuro fight, and I read through the, this Don Krieg fight, and I read parts of the Enel fight, and, I forgot what else I read through, but yeah, quite a few things here, and it's really interesting to see how Luffy fights against Don Krieg, because it's different, and it's different how Oda kind of uses panels to have more emphasis on Luffy's face, because there's still like a lot of stupid things where Luffy's like, no, because Don Krieg has like the stupid question of, who do you think is fit to be Pirate King, you or me? And Luffy's just like, me, obviously, you're an idiot. You're not fit to be Pirate King, no chance. And he does this quite a lot, and they have like, Luffy sticks tongues at him, and Luffy does a lot of stupid things in the fight, but if you take all that out, he like acts really cleverly throughout the entire thing. Okay, so I'm gonna skip to my last bullet point here, because I'm on page 4 now, and just for context, the Sandy video was 7 pages, that's like an hour long, so this might be really long as well, because I still have like 2 pages to get through here, so bear with me for a bit. You can see how long you have left. But yeah, I already talked about how past experiences with superhuman speed could have helped Luffy learn Sora, or his version of Sora. But since that's merely speculation, we can't really use that as concrete evidence for how Luffy applies experience to actual doing things. But we do see Luffy apply the logic of experience a lot of times throughout the series. A really good example is how it's not unusual for Luffy to fight like the bosses of arcs, so Lucci, Crocodile, Enel, I guess, Doflamingo, people like that multiple times during that one arc. So he'll lose to them in the beginning, like I think he loses to Crocodile like 2 times before he actually defeats him the 3rd time. Doflamingo is kind of like a hit and run a lot of times, or like a hit and then, ooh, I need energy, or ooh, I ended up fighting Bellamy instead. stuff like that. Something goes wrong or something for Luffy to lose or not finish the fight and he has to go for another try. But a lot of these pre-battles, I call them that, before the finishing battle where he obviously wins because he's the main character and he's Luffy and we love him. A lot of times he takes the experiences that he's gained from the losses or stopped fights and he applies it to when the final showdown is there and he wins. Like the best example is again with Crocodile, how he figures out how if he's wet, Crocodile can't use his sand, so he grabs onto Crocodile when he's like really bloody and he figures out, oh, sand, water comes together, he can't do anything. Okay, let's spray myself with water and when I'm out of water, let's just use the blood that I have on me anyway. Just for a fun fact, if you ever go back and watch rewatch Marineford or reread Marineford, Luffy uses a lot of past experiences in that arc because obviously there are a lot of characters he's met before and there are a lot of like top tier dudes. So a really good example is how when he's faced or he tells Jinbei to throw him and he lands in front of the 3 admirals and Luffy knows that like he's way out of their league. There's no way he'll measure up to these guys. Like, he was utterly useless against Aokiji alone, and now there's 3 of them. And they had an encounter with Kizaru as well, and then they're talking, like, what will he do against 3 of them? So he really smartly, like, he keeps his distance, like, he throws a mast at them, and then he re-throws the frozen mast at them, like, using Gatling, and basically just distracts him so he can run past or whatever he does. I'm pretty sure it turns out okay for him, but, you know, he knows to avoid these people, and he does it too with, what was my other example? Oh right, because again he knows like they're the pacifista, there's Mihawk, Smoker, Tashigi, people he's met before, so he knows who he's strong enough to be able to take on and win within the time limit he's given, and who he's either not strong enough to win against or not strong enough to win against quickly because there is the time ticking on Ace getting his head chopped off. So Luffy's really smart because in this instance he knows, okay, my priority is saving Ace from getting executed. My priority is not beating these guys, so he deals with like the low tier common marines, and I think he also deals a little bit with Tashigi for like 10 seconds, and then he kind of just runs away and only like kind of fights Mihawk because Mihawk is in the way, and then someone takes over, what's his name, Vista? The same with Moria, Jinbei takes over from there, with the Pacifista, Hancock helps, like all of that stuff, just you have people helping, and that's a good thing because Luffy just wants to keep running, and then, you know. Marineford is really, really fun to rewatch if you just stop before Ace dies, okay? Just stop that, because Luffy's reaction to that hurts me every time. I don't know why. Why? Anyway, the last example I want to pull up is my favorite fight, Luffy versus Enel, and oh my god, I love this fight so much. Like, I already talked about Luffy and his brain dead mode, and while there are honestly a lot of things I could talk about in this fight because this is really like, this fight is the pinnacle of smart Luffy, I'm just gonna talk about Luffy's experience with lightning, because I'm a full believer in the fact that no one ever told Luffy that rubber was not affected by lightning, because no, I don't think that happened. So I believe that Luffy figured this out by himself somehow. I mean, either he was probably not struck by lightning, but you know, other things can like produce lightning or electricity or stuff like that. Also, like, I have a feeling if someone told Luffy after he got his Elfruit power, I don't think Luffy would remember stuff like that. Luffy is not the person who remembers things that people tell him. He remembers more experiences. So if he's told, oh, ice is cold, he'll be more likely to remember the sensation of feeling cold ice than people telling him, oh, ice is cold because blah. That's just how I have interpreted Luffy's mind working, and I think a lot of you will agree with me on that. Like, again, if someone tells him lava's hot, he'll believe you because he's experienced that lava's hot. But yeah, Luffy remembers this, or he knows this somehow, and basically charges at Enel because Enel does not know this, and apparently Nami hasn't figured it out either. Like, no one has figured this out, apparently, until Luffy just goes on and charges Enel and his attacks do nothing, because rubber. But Enel is not just a lightning user, he is actually quite a smart fighter, and he has more tricks up his sleeve than just like lightning after lightning after lightning. And Luffy basically ends up with this golden ball of shit on his hand, and, you know. But Luffy does use this ball to his advantage, because Luffy is smart, and he can fight what he's given, which is probably also a thing he gained from when he was younger, like, you know, surviving Great Terminal and that fucking crap forest that was before Great Terminal, and all the shit he went through as a child. You know, yeah, he was 7 when he first met Ace. That was young. But yeah, let's skip to Enel's Cloud of Doom, because he's about to destroy Skypiea with this epic black cloud of concentrated electricity and thunder and crap, and I would hate that because I am scared of thunder. But Luffy sees this and is like, I have the best idea. I will jump into the Cloud of Doom. And he basically screams a lot at Enel because he's like, no, we worked so hard to get this Skypiea, you can't destroy it now. And then he just swings his ball around. And of course this helped because, oh yeah, gold conducts lightning, which Enel has one of, like, he has that face of, oh shit, gold conducts lightning. Oh my god. Oh my god. But again, how does Luffy know this? There's no way someone would go up to Luffy and say, Luffy, did you know that gold conducts lightning? And then Luffy remembering what that means, just remembering the sentence, just remembering how he could use it. There's no way. He must have experienced this somehow. I do not believe that someone would have told Luffy, yeah, so these are the properties of gold and silver and copper and stuff like that. No way. So yeah, while we never do find out how Luffy has his knowledge, the fact that he's the first thing that he thinks is, oh yeah, gold conducts lightning or something to that effect, like if I swing my ball around, this cloud will like disperse or something. Smart Luffy, smart. And he thinks of this before Nami does. Like, Nami is at this point one of the smartest people in the crew, and I think when it comes to stuff like legit science like electricity and metal, she's probably the smartest person on the crew. I think Frankie will later on be able to battle her on that kind of knowledge, but definitely she should have thought of this before Luffy did, yet she didn't. And that's the same thing with the electricity and rubber thing. She did not think of it until after Luffy had taken like 2 hits. Okay, so in conclusion, and I'm gonna read this again because I don't want to skip anything. Luffy has a natural talent for fighting as well as a natural affinity for Haki, of which he unlocks 2 out of 3 subconsciously before knowing what Haki even is. He's also a good observer and can use this skill to both think up counterattacks as well as apply moves to himself. This also plays into how he learns from experience and can always turn a loss into win because he has acquainted himself with his opponent and can form a counter strategy that will work. You will notice that that sentence would have been really, really hard for me to remember, which is why I read it. This is why I write everything down before I actually make the video. The one thing I will apologize for not going into in this video is Luffy and his Devil Fruit power, because one, I didn't want to make this too long and I feel like it's already really long, but I feel like Luffy and his Devil Fruit power is like kind of an obvious thing. Like, everything about it is kind of obvious because Luffy's creative mindset as well as his understanding of his own strengths and weaknesses helps him to develop techniques that are both unique and useful in a wide range of situations. That is the end of this analysis, which was basically just to sum up why Luffy is a good fighter, both because he has natural ability, he has his Devil Fruit power, he has his Haki, and he's good at using those things. He's good at using past experiences, and he's good at observing things and how he can apply that to different situations and stuff like that. So all the things that we don't really give Luffy credit for, but should give him credit for, because Luffy is a smart character. He's just not smart in the way that we usually think of smart people. So this was the same point that I made in the first video, just on a completely different side of Luffy. So again, Luffy's smarter than we think he is, or smarter than we give him credit for, or you're just happy that someone finally agrees with you. But if you're not, hopefully this gave you a new way of thinking of Luffy as just not another dumb shonen character. Which again, a lot of shonen characters aren't as dumb as they seem to the outside world. A lot of them have like that great emotional intelligence. I just think that with Luffy it's a little harder to spot, perhaps. Like, if you have a character like Naruto, I feel like his emotional intelligence is very, very easy to spot because of his Taco Jutsu. But yeah, I like making these videos. There was a lot of research going into this because I had to confirm every single like example that I pulled up. Like it was like, okay, I kind of remember this happening, but I need to like read through everything to make sure that that actually happened. I didn't make it up in my mind, which is why this took such a long time. And of course because I was ill for like 3 weeks in April. So yeah. But you can give this a thumbs up if you like anything that I had to say. Leave in the comments below what you think, if there are any examples you want to add or anything like that. And you can subscribe if you want to see more. My next character analysis is half written. I don't want to promise when it gets out because, yeah. It's not gonna be for One Piece, it's gonna be for Boku no Hero Academia because, as you might know, I have a big thing for Bakugo Katsuki, and he deserves his own character analysis because, yes, it's gonna be a little different because I'm gonna talk about what, basically, the theme of Bakugo's analysis, just a teaser, is Bakugo Katsuki's real storyline. So yeah, hopefully I'll have that up soon. But just as a warning, and I'll put another video out where I say this, but I have like 5 or 6 exams coming up in like 2 weeks, so I'm like studying super hard to pass all of my exams. So like if the extra content is on a bit of a download, that's why. But after that, like, I have a summer holiday where hopefully I don't spend too much time on other things, which again I'll talk about at that point. At some point I'll talk about that because I have a pretty busy schedule just in the beginning of July. But other than that, I should have like a few weeks in June, maybe like one and a half week, and then most of July and most of August I should be able to make a lot of extra content, so a lot of analysis, hopefully some theories, maybe some, I don't know, other fun videos. We'll see. We'll see what happens, but summer holidays coming up after the exams, so I'll have more time then. And yeah, until next time guys, bye.